Hello. Welcome to the beginning of what I'm sure is going to be exquisite torture. All right. All right, that's not a good sign. Hi, everybody. It's me. Okay. I hope everybody had a lovely day. So yesterday was... Hold on. Today's musical listening is 13 Songs by Fugazi, which is a little too loud. Oh, 2 days ago, the page that we did was this, Heavenly, which is Joan Crawford, David Bowie, and Rasputin to share a burrito. And yesterday's page is Urban Sasquatch Hunters. So we posted this up just a few minutes ago, time being relative and all that. So this one is drawn digitally and colored digitally too. So, and then there's one little sketch card in it. Tricky. Today I've got up on the screen that I'm going to be doing the Werner Herzog page. Skipped ahead to the Werner Herzog pages so that anybody today, maybe I should type this. Put up 2 choices. How's this? For who you think. Just a second, I'm typing. How should I say this? Put up 2 choices for who you think should be in the one page of historical figures boxing. Historical characters boxing. What do you think, Corbin? Which ones do you think it should be? Climbing on my arm, you lunatic. All right. Yeah, so post that. That's in the chat. So yeah, please feel free, anybody that tunes in today, to put your vote forward. All right? Come on, just get it out of your system. Oh, look at me, I'm a cat. I'm needy for attention. Oh my God, I bothered my dad. There you are, buddy. Good stuff. Now lie down. That would please put up your votes for that, and then we'll get to and figure out what we're going to do for that page. That's the only reason I held off on doing it today, is that I thought I would give people an opportunity to put that forward for themselves. There's 2 specific characters that people have interest in being included in the fisticuffs. I mean, there's been suggestions like Hemingway. I mean, that's obvious, right? It's a good choice, but it's a very obvious choice. Hemingway versus Vonnegut. It's a great notion, but I thought it's kind of also, it's a great idea, but it's also an idea that would have a potentiality of happening because they were both the same roughly. So I think the perspective on it could be 2 completely ridiculous people that you would never think would be connected to each other at all. Like one of the things that I enjoyed about the page 2 days ago, Joan Crawford, David Bowie, and Rasputin sharing a burrito, was the fact that, the only thing those 3 people have in common is the fact that they're all dead, which is a heavenly idea, hence the title. So, yeah. That interesting. So yeah, 2 choices, 2 characters. Let me check the suggestion. We're going back to the note. The suggestion is famous historical characters in a boxing contest. So that leaves it pretty open. So, I like the idea of that a lot. I like the idea that it's famous historical characters. Characters even implies that it to be somebody real. It could be, Sherlock Holmes versus Rin Tin Tin. Those are two characters sometime in front. Or if we're getting history specific. Bearing in mind, I'm going to take license with these people no matter what. I'm going to take license with the characters. So go ahead and put forward two ideas, two people that would probably never meet up. One doesn't even have to be real. The other doesn't even have to be, like, famous historical characters. What about Osiris? What about Osiris? You know what I mean. Werner Herzog versus the Egyptian god Osiris. Actually, it'd be better to be Anubis or Seth. Because then it would just sit there and about distance itself. It'd be a really boring boxing match. But, so that's the page we're doing tomorrow. I'm working on it on a Friday, which means it's a special page. Because I tend to, spend a little more on the Friday pages, just over the, give a little time in the weekend on those, as I'm working on whatever other pages. So yeah, two historical figures, famous historical characters from history that are in a boxing contest. Okay, on to today's comic. Afraid. Don't be scared. Put your 2 votes in. Really think them through. The Village People, your mom. Village People's a group. It's more than one person. Oh, okay. I leave that up to everybody, and I'm going to write all these names down over the course of today's thing, and then see what I can figure out from that. But when it says famous historical characters, there's the assumption of history, right? The assumption that Gilgamesh is based on somebody. I think that follows suit as well. So, because we don't really know about people, do we? Okay, on to today's comic. Today's comic is Werner Herzog hosting a beauty pageant. So that's what I'm drawing today. Newton versus Einstein. Newton versus Leonardo. Has been trying to think of if that's been done. I don't think so. No, because there was a series that Marvel did where they had a secret society that's actually called the Shield and the Spear, which is precedes all of their spy world things, but it's a group of immortals at the center of it all, and those immortal groups are factioned to 2 sides, and those 2 sides are Isaac Newton and Leonardo da Vinci. It also has Tesla in it, and all kinds. No, now they're coming in. Bearing in mind, I might pick one of yours and pick somebody else's. So Newton, Einstein, Socrates, Napoleon. Yep. Spelling is hard. Gotta correct that. Neapolitan ice cream. Yeah, so, and if you think halfway through whatever we're doing today, I change that. I want to choose a different one. That's fine too. I don't care. No changing. One choice only. So, Werner Herzog hosting a beauty pageant today. So. Give myself a little treat of a couple of chocolate-covered almonds. Because I've been a good boy. I just, there's not much rhyme or reason on how I'm going about choosing what I'm working in today. I was watching a program where I finally found one where somebody talks about it's important that you prioritize one specific skill when it comes to making comics, like really develop your drawing, or if you're really good at inking, really develop that. And I knew those programs were out there. I'd come across some before about, there's no point in doing all these learning about all these other things because all of it can be done in a computer anyways. So just worry about penciling. I've seen a few of those. But today I actually saw a show about only do one thing. Whatever it is, just do one. I hope a lot of people don't watch those. And the reason I say that is, it'd be to that person's. People are watching that person saying, yeah. But I think the problem with that is that I find that kind of approach, don't use this, don't do that, to be incredibly discouraging and incredibly limiting. And I usually find that it's projection. What I mean by projection is it's maybe whoever said that it's because of their own limitation. And it's not that they're actively intending to discourage others. It's just the fact that in equivocation of these ideas, they might not even be conscious that they are just discouraging others for being more expanded. Found that disappointing. And I don't know. There's a lot of the problem. Okay, so the problem with me doing this, and the problem with other people like me doing this, sitting here and opening the floodgates of our brain pan and into our illustrative process or whatever our storytelling process is, but also coupled with the fact that you're getting our own piles of neuroses and perspectives on things, is that they're not always good. You're going to get some stuff in there that you actually you shouldn't hear. And that's the challenge with this interweb, with this. There's a couple things about it that I like. One is the fact that it's not just the austere elite that are the only people getting their determinism to be spread out amongst the world. Enough of that. But at the same time, there's an awful lot of inane babble and chatter getting out there in the world as well. And that's kind of disappointing. So when I see programs like that try to talk people out of finding structured experimentation on their part in order to, try new and try new things, try new approaches, and try to find who they are. You also got an awful lot of people trying to chop that down. So for whatever their own reason is, it's just, I'm so great. Listen to how I'm graded. The proof is in the pudding, folks. You are great. Whoever you are, you've got some things that you get up to that the person who's beside you does not and cannot do. And it doesn't mean that only they can do it, or you shouldn't bother learning it, or anything like that. It just means people have developed those skills and developed those facilities to do so. And just because something's trending a certain direction doesn't mean we all have to run off the cliff face like a bunch of lemmings. It's important for us to search out and to explore ideas and approaches and insights that other people might have, and to broadening our perspective, not limiting it. Soapbox. So Yeah, do yourself a favor. If you're somebody poo-pooing somebody else's thing, no matter what it is, if it isn't just constructive, and when I say constructive, that's a limited statement too, because constructive criticism a lot of times is yakety yakking without the facility to do themselves. So constructive means something like, here's the fundamentals of how to do a thing. Here's the basics of how to do a thing to my understanding. And they've defied that convention and have done it in this way, which is a different way to do it. That's constructive outlook. My perspective and the way that I was taught how to do this and theirs is different. They've done it wrong. It's not constructive criticism. Or what they've done is stupid. Or theirs is bad. Theirs isn't bad. It's just different. There's definitely bad output. There's definitely things that people are up to that it's not the best that it could be from them. It does not mean, however, it's just bad. It means that it's of its own. And today's of its own is tomorrow's standardization, right? And unfortunately, that also means that, okay, look at Image Comics. I'm sorry, but Image Comics are garbage. I've never been a fan of the Image stuff other than the intrigue and hype of the day. I thought Jim Lee's stuff has something to it. Just a stylistic thing for me. I liked a little bit of what Whilce Portacio was doing, but more so about what people in Whilce Portacio's studio were doing. And Eric Larson, man, that guy could spit out some high energy impact. Eric Larson might be the closest thing to a contemporary Jack Kirby type that, that's in the market today. He really is. He's got a highly dynamic and stylized style that has that high level of energy and action that Kirby's did as well. To be appreciated, really. But it's not for everybody, and his material isn't for everybody. Neither should it be. Anyways, I'm not an image guy. Never been an image guy. I think that the destructuring of the page layout and the heightening of just impact visuals over structured artistic storytelling approaches has been an absolute negative effect on an industry, right? In the sense that when we put all of our eggs in one basket, which is kind of what happened afterwards, is that so much stuff was trying to have that kind of a visual aesthetic. That was problematic because, you had all this stuff that was in this new vein, this new style. But because it didn't have the hype and energy behind it that these individual creators did, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense. It really doesn't. It's just more and more people doing this sort of generic, random, strangely structured storytelling style and approach. And, some of them make sense of it, like Jim Lee's pages have a structural sense to them. But then you've got others, and it's just this repetitive, reiterative, same thing over and over and over again. And it's produced in a whole bunch of people that just hype that up. That just, that was the best time in comics. It really wasn't. Read more comics. Because unfortunately, it wasn't the best storytelling time in comics. But my problem with Image is far less about the artistic styling, because that is just opinion, right? My problem with Image is business practices that I have a huge problem with. What they've left us with their business practices is far more ridiculous. And the companies around that time that were up to nonsense with their variant covers, silliness, and their multiple covers of the same title, and for really no reason other than to gouge you for money. It's nothing more than that. It's just taking advantage of making more money off of less output. That's it. And I think it's incredibly unfair to people, and it's a lack of respect for a customer base. Capitalistically, on top of the world. But is it necessarily a good thing to be on top of the world as a capitalist? Good for them. They made millions of dollars off of boxes of books that people have in the basement. It's a game of he who has the most toys wins, and that's a zero-sum game. So that's my problem with Image, really. So it's a sort of a ham hockey, postmodernist, deconstructionist approach of hype over output, and well, not output. Yeah, well, output too. Some of these guys were so far behind in their books it was stupid. Or hype over quality, and a lot of nicely printed books, very pretty. But some of these guys were putting out, and still are putting out, cheese. So again, that's an opinion part too. But the business part of it's that's a real thing. It's affected a marketplace. You can't deny those stats. I hate variant covers. I just, I'm a contrarian. Maybe it's because I'm drawing Werner Herzog, a bitter pill that I've swallowed today. Who knows? Somebody's saying something. Hold on. I got to look over at this screen. A couple of comics did that in the 90s as a specialty thing. What couple of comics were that? I'm curious of what the couple of comics were, because I think they all did it, and they all did it ad nauseum. I'd be interested to find out what you think the couple of books were. Everybody jumped on that hype rail, but Image came out the gate producing this, and before Image even started, Marvel was doing it for the X-Mans and Spider-Mans. So, problem with a novelty like that is, from a corporate sensibility, it makes perfect sense. But for an appreciation of your customer base and wanting to maintain the integrity of that customer base, sticking with what you're doing makes zero sense. You're just burning them out. Drug addicts are only so good until the drugs eat them up, right? It's like you put out substandard video games, nobody wants to play them. You put out 15 copies of this comic, well, you're going to burn people's wallet out. One did it and everyone jumped on that bandwagon. Right? You see, Marvel did a couple of them, but people that Marvel did those books with were those Image guys. So that when it went over, when they started Image, they unleashed a torrent of numerous covers for numerous books. Silliness, absolute silliness. And the tragedy of that is all the people that swear, oh, that was the greatest time in comics. Well, you probably had more money than the average bear. Or you're caught up in the hype. We tend to be more fondly reminiscent of the points in our lives where we really dialed into something. And that's the heyday of time. That's the heyday of music for us. That's the heyday of whatever it is that, whether it's our music or our art or our culture or our favorite shows or movies or whatever those interests are. When I really got into sports, when I really, I started marathon walks. I liked hiking, whatever it is. That tends to be a reminiscence of the nicest time. McFarlane Spider-Man with his different color covers, and X-Men #1 had 5 different covers as well that all connected, right? And then X-Force had multiple covers. And every one of those little monkeys went over to and started Image together. And then there you go, off and running. Money, 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 money. My problem is that people that don't think it's about money. My problem is, no, it's about having a bunch of cool covers. Well, keep buying those cool covers. And Swampland in Florida, because it was not about as many cool covers as possible. It was about driving up value and perceived value in books by releasing multiple books based on just the outside image alone. I really hate when they have different artists do the outside of a comic from the interior comic. You know, there's all these artists that are just, you know, they're there for specifically for doing covers. And they should be good. It's a storytelling, it's a sequential storytelling medium. If you're only good at pinups, get out of it. Do some books. You know, it's a question of, well, maybe it's a, you see, maybe this is the Herzog thing. It's about the purity of essence. The purity of essence in the sense that what is comics and what comics are is, you know, storytelling a bunch of events, one before the next, before the next, before the next, and structuring those in a framework or some kind of story. And utilizing that in order to keep somebody amused, keep somebody's interest for a few minutes, tell somebody a tale. You know, there's books that come out in Asia. People will be standing there in a subway reading a book about cook-offs, you know, big cook-offs making, what do you call the sushi contests. You know, this comic is all about this ping pong stars. And yet, you know, I would give more value to that than I would, you know, the output that just to generate capital, right? And the fact that people just believe that, just ham hock that down their throat, and yeah, man, it's good stuff. Now, it's an age thing too, right? Because I was a teenager in the 80s. I remember, and Phil, I think you and I are the same age. So for me, it's a reality thing of being there at the time and watching, you know, and not having a lot of money, watching the kids that had it, this frenzy that developed, and watching all these bozos spending all these dollars on multiple covers of the same book. And I'm like, just try to see the one you like the most and get that one. Why are you buying multiples of this stupid book? And the worst justification I heard at the start was because this is the slippery slope. It's only cigarettes, not dope, right? Well, I have one to put away and one to read. Somebody visited Ditko's studio. Here's the story that I heard about in comics. Somebody was visiting Ditko's studio. Who was? No idea. Can't remember. But they were absolutely shocked and awed that while he's working on Mr. A or one of his self-published Reindian books, he's using Amazing Spider-Man comic pages as underneath the sheet that he's working on now. So this random alternative comic thing that he's doing that's going to see limited distribution at best, a few thousand copies total. He's using Amazing Spider-Man number 43, a page from that, underneath that as a cutting board. And the person said, "What are you doing? You know, Steve, that's money in the bank. That's you can sell all those, you know, and make money." And Ditko's response was something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing again, something along the lines of this is just the byproduct. This is just the process along the way. This is for making a book. I drew on this page, and once they published this page and made the book, good. Okay. It's done its purpose. Move on. And that was his headspace. And I've always thought about that. Like, if a person like Ditko can sit down and say, let's stop being overly precious about stuff and look at it as its function, there's got to be something to that. You know, there's got to be something to it. Is it necessary? And here's the thing. This is where the age thing is going to come in. Anybody south of 50, at least 50, is going to give all kinds of arguments from the headspace of growing up in that period. Well, and those justifications are going to be, well, yeah, but this and this and this. Those are all justifications of the period, right? Because it was very fast upon when I started collecting in the 70s. It was only because a guy named Eddie Smet started a store called Comic Book Collector in London that we could even just go and find comics outside of finding out whatever ones you could, or finding whatever ones you could at the grocery store, variety store, whatever. It was Eddie Smet was one of the first comic direct market stores that you could just go in and there's all the comics. Took the thinking and the challenges out of it. And then within 15 years later, on the outside, okay, that's what the market became. Sharks in the swimming pool. And that's disappointing. And now what is it? Look at the Marvel output right now. Go look at a comic shelf in the stores now and tell me how many of those Marvel comics you want to read. We are talking about the existential nature of existence. I'm spitting all kinds of vitriol out today, Paul, about 1990s comics sucking. Paul, the idea that's up today is put up your two choices. Who you think should be in the one-page comic famous historical characters boxing. And yeah, I'm collecting all these names as they're coming up over the stream, and then I'll pick a couple and go with it. It doesn't necessarily mean that the couple that I'm going to pick is from one suggestion. Just because, just for scuzz, that's why. Because you never know, you might find something more fun to have Newton versus Amelia Earhart. Philip says, it turns out they're not worth much now. Nope, not at all. And people overpaid for those, again, just to put money into a publisher's pocket, not for any real, it was perception of value, perception of notoriety, perception of who has the most toys wins, buy the overhyped book with 15 covers, and then try to sell it back to stores later thinking you're going to pay for your kids' college and finding out that store has entire long boxes full of X-Men #1. Those are great names. I would have picked those. Well, that's Newton, Einstein, Socrates, and Napoleon are on the list so far. Amelia Earhart I don't know where that came from. Ether. Chris's imagination. A terrible, terrible, frightening place. FDR and Helen Keller. Helen Keller would be fun to put with any of the thinkers. Helen Keller would be fun to have her fight, Socrates, because he'd be going around this, the boxing ring, pontificating in Greek, and she'd just be standing there in the corner. That's a terrible. I don't mean it to be a bad deaf joke, but am I thinking of the right person? Helen Keller? Or is Helen Keller the girl that was in the attic? I should know this because we just went and saw an exhibition in Stratford, but my brain is spaghetti today, so. Okay, so far, let's just to give some structure to the page suggested by Twinkle Pies today. My intention with the Werner Herzog host a beauty pageant, you have to already expect that it's not going to be a traditional author, disability rights advocate, political activist, and lecturer. So it was the girl that was deaf and blind, right? Okay. Not, that's not all of who she was, clearly, but you know what I mean. When you're looking for that story trope, that story angle, then it's not that you're just reducing a person down to whatever aspect of themselves, but the truth is that you need to find a key point. So Anne Frank was in the attic. Yeah, we actually just went to Stratford and saw the Anne Frank exhibit. I still couldn't remember the name. You know what's strange? I didn't really feel like I was catching a hold of what Herzog looks like until I drew his neck. And now I feel more like I'm getting a hold of Herzog's face. So, yeah, as I was saying, you can imagine I'm going to have a spin on what a fashion show run by Werner Herzog would be. I'd like to take a turn of a sort of sideways turn on story types. And thanks, guys. I appreciate that. It was Anne Frank is in the attic. Helen Keller was blind to death. Like the last page, it's about urban Sasquatch hunters, but I'm just talking about how inane the whole idea and the individuals that would do that would be. Or the previous page to that of these three arbitrary Joan Crawford, David Bowie, and Rasputin share a breakfast burrito. Well, my take on that one is actually have the way they would behave as personalities in engaging with one another, because I'm sure none of them met each other in real life. But the whole, especially Rasputin, of course, he was dead before I think either of those two were born. So the only things they have in common is they're all three of them dead, hence the peace being. And I have David Bowie and Rasputin reenacting the Dancing in the Streets bit on top of a burrito flying in outer space. So that's always fun. It's an absolutely pointless strip, but sometimes those are more fun. You got to find those little pieces of satisfaction in whatever projects we're working on. I really wish more young people could understand and appreciate creators of the past. And I'm not talking about feeding into some of the existing senior creators that are out there now. Sure, that'd be nice if people with more respect towards Walt Simonson or whatever else. But I'm talking about the ones like, it saddens me that we put all this extra hype into certain contemporary voices that may not, in my opinion, merit it as much as some of the really interesting forward momentums that were put into immediate storytelling by guys like Bernie Krigstein or Winsor McKay. I really wish that more people knew about those guys, and I really wish that more people could clearly identify their works. Does that make any sense? Is there somebody that anybody here can think of that they really like, that they wish as a real great storyteller in comics, that they wish more people celebrated? And maybe it's contemporary. Maybe there's a contemporary name that you think that we should all be more aware of. That's helpful too. But Right now, I think I'm specifically talking about some of the classic guys, right? Because there's definitely, guys that we've lost hold of. There's definitely guys that we've lost, any respect or appreciation for the works that they were doing. Now, mind you, the medium has changed dramatically since the 40s, 50s. Well, Winsor McKay's 1905. He goes back to actually his big moments in syndication started around 1905. So clearly things have changed since then. But the fact that we've lost sight of, the impact of occult, except for these more academic pursuit towards comics. I mean, I wish more people knew more steadily the solid work of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Know his work. You'd know his work. But he's just not one of those guys that everybody knows his name enough, I don't think. I haven't had a chance to see that either, Phil. All right, so here's Werner Herzog. Paul Pate says, I had a professor in college named Ollie Harrington. I'm going to write Ollie Harrington. I'm going to look him up. Ollie Harrington. Super cool dude. He was an incredible artist, a super cool dude, and a friend. That's awesome. That's awesome. So what did he do with his art? Was it traditional? Is it 2D? Is it 2D sequential? What class was this? My favorite indie cat these days is Keith Knight. I'm going to have to look Keith Knight up. Is there any classic creators that made an impact on you that you you think that others might not know? Paul says that Ollie Harrington was political cartooning, mostly one-panel stuff, but some sequential. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, definitely looking that up. Thank you for that, Paul. Appreciate that very much. Political cartooning is one of those things where, well, you know this, Paul. You're fully aware of this, but Philip, you as well, if you're still here. Political cartooning is where you have to get all that impact and all that visual language, all the facets of it identifiably placed in the confines of what is often just one panel, right? And, it's like telling a progression of moments within the same environment, which sort of speaks to that something I talked about recently. Jack Chambers' notion of perceptual realism. The idea of trying to capture a number of moments that make up an engaged moment. I don't know anything about classical artists. It depends on where you're coming from too, right? I think you'd be surprised with a lot of the classic artists that are out there, whose work is like EC Comics guys and the like. Today's listening is Blues and Haiku with Jack Kerouac, Al Cohn, and Zoot Sims. Man, I wish I was named Zoot. Got a number of these Jack Kerouac albums that I really enjoy. It's kind of fun to have in the background when you're working. It calms me. Ollie Harrington talked a lot about Bern Hogarth. Well, Bern Hogarth is one of those staples in drawing, right? Bern Hogarth put out a really strong body of work about how to go about drawing and how to go about drawing human form and anatomy and drapery and it's that same period as guys like the Wyeths, right? Well, I guess the sons of Wyeth, who are also artists and painters, right? But there's a lot of those sort of similar people for a stylistic approach to how to draw. But Hogarth sort of set a tone by putting out the how-to books or the somebody, I was listening to a talk and somebody had the grace and good fortune to sit on the plane beside one of the relatives of I think it was Hogarth on an airplane, and got to talk all about them. So I'm trying to get some of those black lines down to sort of give a little bit of that, solid characteristic line to his face. Like he's got some really crazy, wonderful lines. This real character, character shapes to his face, and it's just, I like that, Paul says, I like Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and Jim Mahood. Jim Mahood's very different than those other two guys. That's cool. I mean, that's really cool, but that's quite a... Klaus Janson, of course, being a really strong actor and a really strong penciler today. He's got a new book he's doing right now of a sequel to the Lois and Clark series that he did when DC was going through all of its rebirth garbage. And a whole new direction for DC. Just to relaunch of everybody again, right? And he was doing this great series about the existing, continuity of the pre-existing continuity of Superman and Lois, and how they're in the sort of pocket of time where, they're still married and they're still together and they're expecting, and they hide out in the rebirth universe. They make it to it, and they buy the farm in Kansas because, of course, DC threw aside all of that origin material from the new Superman that they were presenting. And so they lived on the farm and started raising their little boy. It's really beautifully drawn by him. My food stuff is fantastic. I got some of his earlier releases, and I like him. Sienkiewicz. Bill Sienkiewicz. Sienkiewicz is how the traditional pronunciation would be, but his family's anglicized it, so. Definitely on my list, Sankiewicz. That's why I never think about a lot of these names that you're listing off, because these are names that, these are books I read growing up. This is stuff that was released as I'm into comics. But I hadn't really considered them as being means I'm 1,000 years old. Now, I'm not referring to storytelling in comics from that time period as being that's the better thing and modern stuff is all junk. What I'm saying is that, like you're seeing in a lot of the societal stuff that has postmodern deconstructionism hold of it and taking things apart and not necessarily building on those. I think that a lot of the 90s comics did that. It was a lot of deconstruction without, and there's more losses than gains in the approach that came out of that. Which is why when you see a lot of the indie books that look like they're 90s books, I never find them very interesting. Paul says he never really looked at comics till the mid-90s. I'm not alone in that. There was a lot of people in that same boat. And I think it's when people that were introduced to comics in the 90s, they'll have a far more appreciation of the 90s aesthetic than those of us that were there before that. So my concern is when you see a lot of the modern stuff that's coming out, specifically from like Marvel comics or people that are heavily influenced by Marvel comics, there's almost a through line that you can see of North American talent that's just sliding right off. And there's some really good creators. Of course, there's always some good creators in North America. But a lot of the big popular guys that are at Marvel right now are dudes that are from other parts of the world that have really managed to capitalize on the old, energy of old comics, old Western comics, far better than a lot of Western comics are doing it, with a lot of alternative styles of telling comics about those classic characters. It's like they're doing indie comics using the Marvel characters, which is, fine, do your thing. Just don't expect those people to buy that, right? And don't be upset when they don't. Gary! Paul says he's never been obsessed with comics, really. It's storytelling that fascinates him. It can be books, movies, comics, etc. Yeah, definitely. Hi, Gary. Yeah, no, that's sort of the initial idea is trying to illustrate is that there was so much of a stronger structure in storytelling that I'm worried that we're losing in today's books. So Hodges is in his So I think that what I'm having a problem with the structural breakdown of Herzog's face here is that his lips are too low. I'm looking at the face and going, like, there's definitely a problem with where I put his mouth. We got a lot of frozen rain here in London right now. That's limited mobility for a great deal of people. I don't know why I'm just randomly telling you that. I think there's something to be said for time and place in storytelling and the approaches to that. Like, come on. I will argue the lips off of any single person that tells me that I will take a hard position on somebody tell about the strong merits of all the Marvel movies coming out right now. Because those are just they have a format. They have a tried and true little rule of ticks and dashes that those films need to have in a specific order of action. And the ones that don't, the ones that defy those, which unfortunately are immediately followed up by somebody else doing something similar to it that's not as good. You know, things like Logan, the Logan film, which is a remake of Shane, or James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy, and the bank heist silliness of those things are far and away above and beyond Black Panther or Moon Knight, or some of them are just, I just can't stand some of them at all. But the simplest cookie is the one that most people like the flavor of. I want to see a Werner Herzog version of the X-Men. This is the Wolverine. He's a testament to man's own hubris overcoming him. He's just removed himself down to the base of instinct. Animalistic in nature. That'd be great. I keep advocating a book in the last couple of years that I really wish more people would read, because if you're looking for a real independent take on contemporary, superhero tropes, read Peter Baggy's The Megalomaniacal Spider-Man. It's now, this is, to my understanding, it's Baggy did a Spider-Man book based on the sort of viewpoint, Randianist perspective that Ditko lived by. And so it's a lot of existential argument of self, of whether or not whether Peter should be rescuing people dressed as a spider or whether he has some serious mental illness. It's a lot of fun. I don't know how successful Werner Herzog this is, but blockbuster movies usually suck. Not always, but usually. That's true. Well, there's little generic things that they do, I think, that just are capitalizing on member berries and key point explosions or jump scares or all those little intensity in the sounds rising up and there's little crescendo moments of action and false dramatics, but realistically, that's a lot of people go, oh, I get that. Oh, I see that. Oh yeah. And you got to do what you got to do to earn a shekel, but there's something to be said for alternative approaches to things. There's something to be said for that. There's a movie recently with Dwight from The Office, whatever his real name is, Rain. He was in a film where he's a superhero who's just hammering people with a wrench. His wrench is his tool of justice. And I can't remember what it was called, but that might be one of the most interesting superhero movies to come out. And I think it was, and it's supposed to be in the same universe as like Brightburn. So who did Brightburn? Which is just a deconstruction of Superman as bad guy. It's actually owes too much, and I hope that they paid some respect to Rick Veitch's, maybe Veitch and Bishop even, I don't know, but at least Rick Veitch did a series called Maximortal, which is, Superman arrives as a baby from outer space and immediately turns into a tyrant conqueror of Earth. Isn't the brilliance when you can comply with all the big blockbuster standards, but still come up with something fresh and original? Arguably, Logan is an original modern take on something, but Logan really is a remake of the Western movie Shane, right? But so you can clothe something in the garments of superhero blockbuster or big movie blockbuster, but by using it as interpreted through a different vehicle or a different story idea, sure, but brilliance is a challenging thing. Because homage is homage. I mean, they even watch Shane in that movie on television. It comes up on TV. And yet I arguably would say it's probably a better superhero movie than the greater majority of the ones released in the last 15 years. It's kind of like looking at it as the Unforgiven of superheroes. Unforgiven being the Clint Eastwood film. Okay, so there's Herzog. So the idea that I've got for this is in his presentation of a beauty contest, a beauty pageant, is I really want to have it from him assessing the idea of the beauty pageant and talking about it as the wherefores and whys and sort of breaking it down a little bit. as opposed to just there's lots of women and he gives commentary on all these lots of hot women wandering around. It's, you know. So I want to come at it from that perspective a little bit. Paul says Unforgiven was great. I love that movie. Well, Unforgiven, what's wonderful about that is that it literally takes all of the Western motifs and turns them on their ear. Like your old gunman. Yeah, I was a bad man coming out of retirement. He got sick. It hurts when he's riding his horse, you know. His buddy who's come along with them because he's got an eagle eye and a long shot. It's not reliable, you know. It's just this wonderful stripping down of these old gunfighters. You know, Gene Hackman, the former real bad guy, is now the sanctimonious lawman for the small town because he thinks he's the toughest guy in the area. You know, it's an interesting thing. Will Trump make an appearance on the Herzog page? I don't know. I hadn't considered Donald Trump to make an appearance, but maybe I could have Herzog have Donald Trump to come out to be a participant in order that he appreciates and understands what it is to be looked only as a vessel. Do you like the Russell Crowe movie 3:10 to Yuma? I think it's an amazing remake and far superior to the original. And as good as Crowe is, probably his best role, as good as he is in that, it's definitely, and Christian Bale's good in it too, but it's Ben Foster that steals that movie. He steals that film. Every moment he walks in front of the camera, you're focused on him. The guy in the white outfit, the sidekick to Russell Crowe's character, steals the film. He's a fantastic actor that should be much bigger than he is. But I think he rejects the Hollywood lifestyle and marketing and all that nonsense. I think he doesn't care for it. A lot of those guys don't, though. So I don't know quite. I don't quite know why he's not a bigger name, bigger star. Trump used to own Miss Universe. Huh. I'm gonna write Trump on the list. I'm laughing because I have no time to dally hassle in your heart's house. There's a line that Kerouac just said in my ear with Zoot Sims going on a saxophone behind him. Getting out. You got to listen to Kerouac. You'll appreciate it more. My crazy little bits there, but. So now I'm having him in his speaking, his pontificating thing. Paul Pate says, Ben Foster's character is so hateable in that movie. Yes, he is, but it counts. It counts because of the fact that he instills emotion in the viewer because his character is so detestable. He's fantastic. There's another film that he's in with Dennis Quaid where he plays an astronaut on a ship where this 20,000 people are in cryosleep, and he wakes up and the whole ship is in jeopardy and shut down, and it's called Pandorum. He's incredible in that. But his first appearance in that film, he has to strip off extra layers of dermis that have grown over time because he's been in hypersleep for so long, pulling tubes out of himself, like just because, commitment. That's what that is. Hope they did that in one take. We're going to have to feed this tube back down your throat, Ben. We didn't get that line. You said, ha, 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 and you should have said, I like Tuesday. Yeah, he's a good actor. The gunfight, the big gunfight at the end of that's good. I just watched the remake of the seven. What's the seven samurai remake in the Old West? I keep wanting to say the Dirty Dozen, but that's clearly not it. Anyways, they did one of these years ago, and then they did one recently, a remake of it. It's got like Vincent D'Onofrio and Denzel Washington. You're like, dang, they got some actors in this, right? People that can act. And yeah, it's a gunfighter movie remake. And I was hoping for so much because I'm like, Denzel in an Old West movie? Yeah. No. It's what it is. However, Magnificent Seven. Thank you. That's it. Back to work, Paul. Thanks very much for hanging out, buddy. The truck is here to take me back to the funny farm. They're coming to take you away, haha. Yeah, check out Fallen starring Denzel. It's Denzel Washington in a horror movie. I think this works. I think the first Herzog drawing works. I think that you get that Herzog-y vibe. This is going to be the 39th. This is the 39th episode of Everyone Wants to Listen to My Podcast, but it's also the 38th. It's the 38th episode, but it's also the 38th. We're done the 38th one-page comic already. This is number 39 that I'm actually working on now. And since the start of the year, and I'm times 2 that right now for pages so far. So it's going well. This year's going well. I'm getting a lot of stuff done. I'm good and productive, but and I've got some more opportunity coming up. In fact, plug, I'm doing some voiceover work at an upcoming project. Yeah, I'm going to be doing some voiceover work for a couple of characters for an animation. I'm really excited about that. I feel really honored to have been asked. So I'm going to do my best voice. You want to hear it? You ready for it? I like bowling. That's it. It's not it. So I want to take apart some of the notions of okay, so here is Werner Herzog doing his terse introduction of welcome to the Werner Herzog beauty fashion program, and then the next panel is going to be, I'm trying to hit the tropes of beauty pageants. And so the next panel, I'm drawing Werner Herzog singing the introduction to the show. So it's, there the girls, look at those ladies, type of a thing. But as talk sang by William Herzog, or Werner Herzog, I'm sorry. I had my drink Batal, and I don't know where I put it. So building on what I was talking about at the start, there are so many fantastic creators that I think I would really like to put together a list and post somewhere if people would be of interest to it. If you want to learn about storytelling in comics, if you want to learn about the structure of how to tell a story in whatever amount of limited space that you have to do it in, there's some absolute masterful examples of that have been done over the years in comics. And unfortunately, the level that some of these were done at, you're not seeing in today's comics. It's just not happening in today's books by any large release. Now, I know a guy named, Zippy Flubber, and Zippy Flubber does the best, okay. But my point is that not everybody knows who Zippy Flubber is. So we need to get the word out on Zippy. at the same time as real Zippy. But there are lots of people out there like Zippy. So we need to go out on those guys. At the same time, we need to get more understanding and comprehension of the how to go about approaching the storytelling directions that these guys would do. And I'm referring to is guys like Will I, well, I could start doing a list now if people are interested. I could start writing them down, and maybe people want to make a note of it. Oh, here's doing, Gary. I'd love to see a list like that. I'm not super comic literate. It's almost like homework, though, a list like this, because well, here, let's see. I'm going to start one off, okay? Lined paper, folks. It's business. What is that? I just crunched up. I just crunched up a note. Sure of it. Yes, I did. I know we're excited for the paper crunching. All right. Okay, so here's the list of names that people should really look into. Will Eisner has a couple of books, well, one book primarily, that has come out in numerous versions over the years. But this is Will Eisner, Comics and Sequential Art. And this is a masterclass in how to tell comic books. Like how to, the style is very much a style of its time and day. But the things that you learn from this and the different approaches and the different outlooks on how to go about structuring things, he shows you from actual published work that he's done. You know, and then he talks about a number of the different breakdowns and other processes that people can apply this rule to, and the processes of going about assembling comics or assembling animations or assembling film. And so a lot of specific things to look at, and even goes into specific things that you really should try to get some sort of understanding, you know, and that's a list that you're not generally going to see in how-to comics these days, that for sure. But psychology, physics, mechanics, time, language, draftsmanship, talking about myths in there. There's so much stuff, and that's just a rough breakdown for that, you know. But then he talks about, you know, the different ways about going about kicking out text and type and promoting the front face of a book, or different ways a comic can be used for different things. Will Eisner, masterclass, and there are things that he did there, like Bree, that other people have never come across at all. So Eisner, Kriegstein, I haven't got his book in front of me right now, but Bill Kriegstein. Bill Kriegstein did a thing where he established something that really incredibly powerful, identifiable about the emotional impact and correlation to the size and shape of panels. And then he figured out as well how to tell intensity of action in the size and shape placement of panels. So there's a guy who sees a person that he saw when he was at Auschwitz, who he starts chasing after, because this is a person that was a guard when he was a prisoner. And it gets into this intense street chase or subway chase, right? And a lot of emotion and a lot of action and direction. So look into Kriegstein. He taught high school, and people approached him in high school and said, "Mr. Kriegstein, is that you?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I used to do that." Meanwhile, he's talking about all this contemporary modern art students. They had no idea he did comics. Winsor McCay. If you haven't looked at Winsor McCay stuff, start there. 1905, The Adventures of Little Nemo in Slumberland. Just on top, right? Just on top. I can't imagine people. Now you're going to look at stuff, and he does blackface characters, which is incredibly unfortunate. But at the same time, he's not the only one that did that back then, for sure. Unfortunately, everybody did that. It doesn't make it any better, but it sure makes it of its time, right? But he did some incredible things with Sammy Sneeze. All it is a running strip running weekly periodical about a kid that every time he sneezes, he puts everything asunder. And yet the setup to those and the takedown of those, like the complete destabilization, deconstruction of panels, and the blowing apart all of the visual imagery that he's stacked into a room of lamps and table settings and all that, and that kid sneezes, and literally all this stuff looks like it's gone blasting through the air. Tales of the Rarebit Fiend, and unfortunately Tales of the Jungle Imps is the one that has an awful lot of inappropriate representation of people of color, but Little Nemo in Slumberland is genius. I haven't even seen that new film that stars the Zippity Doodah from the Game of Thrones there. I have no intention of seeing the modern make of Slumberland. It looks like crap. There's him. There's Alphonse. Al Williams is, and these are names that people will know, but look what Al Williamson did with Boy. Absolute incredible. And you can see it. You're going to see all people whose work is directly in relation to what Al, like it's just, there's a mastery of pen and ink in this fellow that was just above and beyond. And it's one of those things where, like Steve Epting draws like Al Williamson, right? And not to diminish Steve Epting's uniqueness and individual contribution, because he's a fantastic storyteller. He's a true storyteller, Steve Epting, by the way. Highly recommend him contemporarily. But what Williamson was doing at that time was just above and beyond. And he did periodical work. The Modesty Blaze, I think, was him. X9 was him. Yeah, great stuff. Any of the old Mad guys, okay, the way when I'm talking about Kriegstein, any of the old school, the old gang at Mad, and I'm talking about like the earliest guys, and just look at any of the early Mad comics, open them up, and everybody that's in those books is top form. You know, a lot of the East gang were the same way. A lot of incredible talents came out of EC Comics. Absolutely incredible stuff. Stuff that you never think was just, you never think it possible for that much raw talent to be in a group together. Here's a sideways twist. Look at Hergé. Again, unfortunately, lousy representations of people of color in the early books. They've tried to go back and edit all of those and change them now. Hergé, if anybody knows what he did, Tintin, right? So EC Comics, the old gang at Mad EC. Al Williamson. Al Williamson did the adaptation of Empire Strikes Back. That's Alphonse Williamson, right? If you're looking for a contemporary thing that he did. But he also did the Star Wars. He also did Star Wars single issue comics that were coming out for periods as well. And they've collected a lot of those. The vintage Star Wars is what they released at in comic form. Little McKay is neat. Kriegstein is an EC horror guy from that time period. Eisner, of course, is Spirit. Al Williamson, again, just worked on so many things. I mean, that's a healthy list to start with. And then there's the impact of contemporary guys like we overstated how much impact Otomo has had. And Otomo, for a Japanese artist, that's Akira, right? But there's contemporary stuff that's coming out, books like I'm a Hero, or projects like Tekon Kincrete. That's now stuff that's heavily influenced by what Otomo had kind of started from his headspace. And a lot of really great French artists that are working with Curacao that I like as well. But their style is directly in relation to a sort of a continuance. A lot of these is a sort of continuance of what Jean Girard did, which Jean Girard is Mobius. But a lot of but I'm not going to put the Mobius on that list, by the way. Only because Mobius has so much work that's out there. His specific comic stuff, like his Western books and that, are on point for absolute storytelling. But a lot of people only look to his sci-fi work, and it's a completely different pacing. I'll put it that way. It's a lot of open expanse, and and all the stuff is just, it's flat images, right? It's not the same thing. Like his Blueberry Western books are fantastic. I would recommend those over the rest of his work. Not all of his work is genius, but it's not the same as Blueberry. Blueberry's pacing and tone and really absolutely fantastically established Old West in the desert. So I put Mobius down for anything. It's Blueberry, right? Absolute genius Western comic. I don't know. That's a good start. I just list names all day long, but I don't know if that's necessarily what you're after there. But that's a pretty good gang of caricatures. Oh yeah, this is the other one I'm going to put down. Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, and he did a character book for DC in the 1980s or 80s. If you look at Jose Luis Garcia Lopez's character book, and you'll realize that in single image drawings, he has captured all the essential characteristics and form of every superhero character that he draws. The way he differentiates Captain Marvel from Superman is phenomenal. The way that he differentiates characters like Batgirl from Black Canary. It's two very similar characters, but in the pencil and pen of Garcia Lopez, yeah, really unique and authentic. So, and he did a book for DC where he took, I can't remember who wrote it, maybe it was Chaykin, but I've always been more taken by the art. But the series takes all of the future 1960s, 50s characters of DC, like Space Cabbie. It's a private eye who drives a cab in the 25th century, out of space. So it's like trying to do crime noir stories in outer space in the 1960s, I think it was. But Tommy Tomorrow, all these different sort of C-string, B-string characters owned by DC Comics. They did this fantastic series of books illustrated entirely by him that was just amazing. I think I cut out there for a second. We're getting close to that time anyways. Okay, so I'm going to work on this page. There's that list if anybody wants to write those down. Sorry, I'm moving it around on you. So with the Herzog page, there's the intro, there's the song, because you got to have that "Welcome to the Girls on the Stage" song. And the opinion piece. There's the bathing suit section, and I'm going to go sideways on these, but I'm just trying to break down the parts of a beauty pageant. I can't tell you when the last time I ever saw a beauty pageant was. So I don't really know what they do. Do they do a big dance routine? Maybe I think they do a dance routine. I don't know. A talent section. Am I putting too much on this? Am I thinking of a kid's talent show? Talent section. Watch now as I saw this girl in half. No, it's not gonna be that. And then I think there's the big presentation and then the sign off. I don't know. So I'm going to try to take those different aspects of what a beauty talent show is and try to look at them from my work perspective and perhaps what would be the work perspective of Werner Herzog and try to figure out that. So yeah, but I think I'm gonna sign off. It's an hour and a half in. Yeah, I talked a bit today about my dissatisfaction with 90s comics because of the challenges presented in the postmodern deconstruction of storytelling that came around in the 90s, which is, you've seen a refinement to a lot of it now. There's a refining aspect to what was presented by those guys that has had, so there's been positive impact, but it's only in that refinement that I think that positive impact happened. But I think that the real negative output from the 90s comics was the covers and all this other nonsense that holds no allure to me. I mean, it works good for people making money from sales, but I can't see its merit for how it serves the customer other than, you know, as an opiate. Got to buy every cover, man. So yeah, so I mean, I really want to promote and encourage people to do that and research into it, find out more about some of these classic creators, hence the list. I'll be back tomorrow with this page, and tomorrow, based on some of the suggestions, and anybody that still hasn't yet given me a suggestion, I'm going to swing up here in the comments too. The request put forward earlier said, put up 2 choices for who you think should be in a one-page comic of famous historical characters boxing. Okay? So if anybody that tunes into this, anyone watches this, that hasn't put down their suggestions, or anybody that watches this postscript that wants to put down suggestions for it, please feel free to do so in the comments. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I got some absolutely bonkers names so far to try to fit these people together. And yeah, I think there could be some really fun ideas in that. So, you know, let me know on that one. And other than that, I'm going to click out and I'll leave this up on the screen. But yeah, it's been fun. I'm sorry if it came off as a diatribe today. I'm sorry if it came off as Chris just his brain blowing up and a vitriol on you about his feelings on those things. I don't mean it like that. I just mean that enough of these discouraging opinions about things not being right. And in the context of what I was looking at, they were saying that any comics that don't, you know, sort of draw like the image books of the 90s are wrong. And that really annoyed me today in this. And I'm very seldomly at that thumbs down kind of a guy. But, you know, I think that solid and opaque an opinion, you have to use these tools to be, you can only approach comics in this way for them to look good. Yeah, I think that that's boring. So yeah, look into all these creators of the past. Look into all the different approaches and different styles and different things that they used to do and put into their books, and how they would editorially just try to get to the essence of a story, get to the essence of a scene, essence of what the comics are really about, and that is, and animation's really about, films are really about, books are really about, and that's just storytelling, right? Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Everybody have a good night. Keep creating. Bye for now.